All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Kroskoff as President of Basketball Business Operations for the Indiana Fever.
This was not anticipated by anyone. The quiet part was finally said aloud by the Indiana Fever president, who was seated at the top of the entire organization. Her remarks raised eyebrows and stirred up the entire basketball music community. For the first time, the realities of that franchise, music, politics, pressure, locker room dynamics, and the struggle between creating a champion and a brand were exposed. Everything you believe to be true about Caitlin Clark's circumstances in Indiana is altered once you learn the whole story. Let's now return to the start of this tale. Indiana was one of the least well-known teams in professional basketball prior to Caitlin Clark ever donning a Hoosier uniform. 6 victories in 2021 are being discussed. 2022 saw 5 victories, while 2023 saw 13. They were a joke for almost 10 years. No fans, no buzz, no spotlight. There wouldn't be any cameras. The crowd weren't filling the seats. Whatever the Fever had been, the WNBA scene had drastically shifted. That was the truth. A once proud franchise was neglected. But despite their best efforts, nobody in that front office could have anticipated what transpired. When the first overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft entered the room, everything changed. Caitlin Clark not only lowered the temperature, but also altered the league as a whole. Everywhere she performed, the crowds were completely sold out. A media frenzy that, to be honest, had never been witnessed in women's basketball since music, record-breaking TV ratings, and jerseys flying off the racks. In the middle of that eruption, the organization had to make a choice. Would they attempt to change the direction of the wave or ride it? The Fever required someone at the top who knew exactly what they had, and that's where the whole tale starts to get interesting. A once-in-a-generation athlete who was revolutionizing women's sports on her own. Additionally, a move made by the front office startled a lot of individuals. Kelly Kroskoff was appointed as their new president of business operations and basketball. It made sense on paper. Kroskoff had previously founded the Fever, been a member of the team that won the 2012 championship, and had first-hand knowledge of the group. The group introduced her with all the excitement that was expected. However, something in her initial rhetoric during the news conference brought up issues that many at the time chose to ignore, but which would later come back to destroy the entire company months later. No one noticed the warning signs until it was too late, since they were concealed in plain sight. At this time, everything fell apart. July of 2025. Caitlin Clark's injury-related absence is causing problems for the Fever. Due to a groin problem that has been plaguing her for weeks, Clark has only participated in 11 games this season. Fans are irritated. The team is on the verge of making it to the postseason. There is increasing pressure. On the same day that the video from Kroskoff's first press conference inexplicably resurfaces on social media, the internet unearths a speech from October 2024 that most people had completely missed. This is about the Indiana Fever, Kroskoff declared while looking directly into the cameras at the news conference. Yes, Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston are our foundational players, and we plan to keep adding to them. However, I want the squad to be a national leader and a long-lasting brand like Apple or whatever. 5 words, a company like Apple, that was all that was needed because that wasn't a vision that many people heard in that line. The video became viral in a matter of hours, and the fan base grew rapidly. It was a warning. Such a reaction was unprecedented in the Fever front office. In addition to being irate, fans were well-organized, noisy, and difficult to ignore. The analogy to Apple resonated differently because of what Apple actually achieved. Their whole identity was built around one visionary, Steve Jobs, and the business nearly collapsed after his departure. As a result, when the Fever president used that exact analogy, Clark supporters saw something in it that looked revealing, as if the group already saw Clark as an element rather than the main focus. On social media, a fan reacted to enduring brands that share their beliefs. Apple became a global icon thanks to Steve Jobs, the company's star and visionary. Another fan also didn't hold back. The Fever will admit they squandered the best opportunity in women's sports history. They said when Clark finally decides she's had enough of the front office dumpster fire, The message boards, comment sections, and replies all reflected the same fundamental feeling. You don't downplay the most important player this team has ever had, and you continue to pay attention to her. The criticism wasn't simply noise. Kroskoff's entire account vanished a few hours after the video became viral, completely empty, where there had only been a social media presence a few days earlier. This was a decision, and someone in that company knew how bad things were getting. Instead of a message or an explanation, there was silence. This is where it gets even more complicated, because while front staff was being vilified online, the players on the court, the ones who really suited up next to Caitlin Clark every night, were presenting a completely different and much more honest story. Lexi Hull, one of Clark's closest pals, didn't hold anything when she applied for a Glamour magazine article. Hull said that everyone in the league already knew, even though almost no one wearing a Fever uniform had previously been willing to disclose. I think there is some jealousy over the Fever because of the media exposure and the people who have stood beside us since Caitlin came. She went one step further and revealed that in their own locker rooms, teams from all over the league have been openly talking things like, "We can't let the Fever win." Hull's comments expose an unsettling reality that had been emerging for 2 seasons. The Fever do more than just play hoops these days. Every time they play, they are in a situation where other teams have singled them out because of a single person on their squad, rather than the team's overall performance. Sophie Cunningham took it a step further. The player who made it clear early on that taking cheap shots at her teammate would have consequences, and who established herself as Clark's enforcer on the floor, had already come forward and confirmed what the entire league had been speculating about. Before entering Indiana, Aaliyah Cunningham said she heard it when she was still in Phoenix. She said there were explicit conversations about Clark in the locker room, that competitors weren't just out to win. They were trying to get their point across. Music throughout the season. The narrative of Clark being physically targeted and getting an endless welcome to the W moment has been documented. By the time her groin injury ended her season after just 13 games, even unbiased observers were taken aback by the severity of the rough play directed at Clark, and many were seriously doubting whether the referees had sufficiently protected her. The response was no, according to an increasing proportion of those who were paying close attention. But as all of this was taking place in the public view, the inner story of what it's really like to be Caitlin Clark's co-worker was starting to come to light. So, it was just the beginning. It was also not what the critics had expected. The narrative that Caitlin Clark's critics had pushed the most was a simple one, that she created problems in the restroom. The players didn't like her. That no team could withstand the fissures brought on by the fame and attention. Hall of Famer Cheryl Swoop stated on a podcast in September 2024 that key Fever players were quietly showing their lack of enthusiasm in going that the situation around Clark was beyond their capacity. It spread swiftly as the Fever entered their second season together. It became a part of the background chatter, or the music was playing all throughout the place. Unless, of course, Clark felt compelled to make an appearance as a guest on another March Madness show presented by Diana Taurasi and Subbard. She took it on heeding. She wasn't angry. She didn't behave defensively. She was remarkably calm about it. You basically get used to people thinking they know what goes on behind closed doors when in reality they don't. Music, the colleagues who were there in that locker room also kept encouraging her. After recovering from her injuries, Clark's teammates flooded the floor during the 2025 playoffs. After the game, they cut off her interview. They showed up for her at unexpected times. After the Fever won the Commissioner Cup, there was genuine celebration in the locker room. It didn't read like performance when players bonded, laughing and truly happy for each other. This is what the media hasn't yet put together. The Fever story never focused on whether or not Caitlin Clark's teammates liked her. It was about whether the front office, which oversaw them all, was ready to surround her with the necessary components and devote all of their attention to the project. The reason for the discrepancy is that Aaliyah's connections were sincere at the judicial level. Music. Boston and Clark were close friends. Lexi Hull was cautious. Sophie Cunningham and other new players were gushing over Clark before they had even played a game together. Michaela Timpson, the rookie who made the final roster, showed genuine respect for Clark in a manner that is hard to replicate. After the expansion draft, Clark wrote remarks on Instagram for 2 of her teammates. "Cub, I love you, for Christy Wallace, and my Aussie for life, for Chloe BBY. The affection was genuine. These were real relationships, but contact are not enough to win titles. And that was the tension at the heart of it all. Not only the Apple sound clip, but the entirety of Kelly Krokoff's comments from the October 2024 press conference featured something that many people missed in their rush to voice their disapproval. When Krokoff expressed her desire for the Fever to be a long-lasting brand, she was talking about the long game. Caitlin Clark was 10 years old when Indiana won its only title in 2012, she said, adding that sometimes it takes a generation to reach the next level. Maybe the group had been working for someone else all along, planting the seeds for a 10-year-old somewhere who will be inspired by what the Fever was doing at the time. Whether you view that as vision or deception depends on how you perceive the front office's actual priorities. But this is undeniable. Fans that attended the Fever starting in 2024 did not show up because of the brand. They came because of a player. They drove for hours at a time. The WNBA had never seen payments like the ones they made. The number of spectators had never been predicted by the league. Additionally, when Clark's injuries kept him from playing in ways that could be measured, documented, and publicly acknowledged, ticket sales declined. TV viewership fell. The harsh reality of what Clark represented to that franchise was unavoidable. But the team, the institution, and the brand kept coming up in the organization's top-level message, as if the person attracting all of that attention was somehow separate from it. During that news conference, Kroskoff made a statement that was particularly noteworthy. If you are a smart basketball player and you see how Caitlin Clark plays, you want to play alongside her, she said. And it turned out to be more true than even she probably recognized at the time. As the Fever's recruiting success had quietly evolved into one of the WNBA's most captivating narratives, players had to take pay cuts in order to fly to Indiana. For veterans, the opportunity to play with Clark was a determining factor. Packed stadiums weren't the only places where Clark's fan base existed. Because of the environment it was creating, players wanted to be a part of something bigger than a normal WNBA season. Despite this, the Fever had become one of the league's most popular venues, not because of the brand strategy, but rather because of a basketball player who made everyone around her better and filled buildings wherever she went. Let's move on to 2026 and the Fever's future endeavors. The franchise lost 2 players in the WNBA expansion draft. Chloe BBY White to Portland, Christy Wallace to Toronto. Clark herself had to endure a season that was supposed to be her breakthrough second year, but instead it was a nightmare of injuries that limited her to just 13 games during the regular season. Despite averaging 16, 5 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds per game, she was selected for the All-Star game. She continued to be the center of interest for the league despite sitting on the sidelines in civilian clothes. Underneath it all, the Fever were building what Kroskoff called a foundation for the next generation, a $78 million performance complex. Even though it won't open until 2027, the music facility is meant to be the kind of home base that attracts elite talent for many years to come. The parts are in position. The question is whether the people in charge of making judgments above the court are aware of what they have and whether they intend to take action before it's too late. Beneath every disagreement over the Fever's headquarters, every problem with Clark's teammates, and every passionate remark about friction in the locker room, there's a bigger reality that is actually much simpler than any of it. This squad went from winning 5 games a season to being the most watched team in women's basketball in just 1 year. This isn't a reconstruction, it's a revolution. Moreover, revolutions are not the result of brand strategy boards. They happen because of once-in-a-generation performers who provide intrigue, music, competition, and entertainment value to everyone around them. Fans perceive the danger in the Fever president's claim to build a brand comparable to Apple, which sparked a frenzy. The same danger that brought down other franchises that tried to use a logo in place of their star. The athletes in that locker room know the truth better than anyone else. They have played by it and witnessed it firsthand. And as demonstrated by every moving sideline exchange and post, what they consistently say in every social media post and interview while playing with Caitlin Clark isn't just different. This is an opportunity that doesn't come around twice. The Fever would benefit from making sure that the people in control of that organization share the same beliefs. One thing is certain. Thus, The window is open right now. The question is not whether the opportunity exists. Whether they are daring enough to actually surprise everyone is the question. The woman sitting at the top of the entire organization, the president of the Indiana Fever, finally stated the silent part out loud. And more than just eyebrows were raised by her comments. The world of basketball was ignited by it. The locker room dynamics, politics, pressure, music, and the battle to build a champion and a brand all collapsed for the first time. And when you hear the complete tale, everything you thought was true about Caitlin Clark's situation in Indiana is changed. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this story. Before Caitlin Clark ever wore a Hoosier uniform, Indiana was among the least famous teams in professional basketball. There's talk about 6 wins in 2021, 5 wins in 2022, and 13 wins in 2023. For nearly 10 years, they were a joke. No fans, no buzz, and no limelight. No cameras would be present. The crowd weren't filling the seats. The WNBA scene had completely changed regardless of the Fever. That was the reality. A once proud franchise became an afterthought. But no one in that front office could have planned what happened, no matter how hard they tried. Everything changed when the 2024 WNBA draft's first overall pick walked into the room. Caitlin Clark changed the league as a whole in addition to lowering the temperature. To ensure you don't miss anything, please leave a comment, subscribe, and turn on all alerts. Once you click the video on the screen, we'll see you in the next one.